Hello, folks, wherever you are in the world, welcome into the Freedom Portal. One of the nice things about the Freedom Portal is you can access it wherever you are. And I have seldom been more excited, I'm not sure ever, about a conversation than this one today. We are going right to the tip of the spear. The title of this conversation is Ethical AI, the Key to a Free and Thriving Future. So let that sink in for a minute. That is not overstatement. This is not hyperbole. And we get to have three of what I call the three musketeers of this critical moral movement all with us today in the Freedom Portal. And that's Matthew James Bailey, Katalin Walcott, and Rajiv Malhotra. These are three of my true heroes. They are stepping up at a critical time on planet Earth and bringing their skills, their consciousness, their brilliance, and maybe especially their courage to this moment, really to humanity at this moment. Our biggest challenge today is how do we narrow down all the amazing things that we could cover into 2 hours? And what we're going to do is I'm going to interview each of these amazing folks individually for probably about 15 minutes. And then we're going to have a roundtable discussion. And in between those two, we'll invite the people from the public platforms to join us for a free trial in the Freedom Portal where you can continue the conversation. We've got folks joining us today on Odyssey, on Rumble, on YouTube, on Telegram, Facebook. People are restreaming on LinkedIn, and affiliate partners from all over the world are joining us today with their own social media platforms. So we're at a moment in history where, in my opinion, the major thing that's going on, the drama on planet Earth, can be boiled down to it's a battle between collectivism leading toward global tyranny versus individual freedom, leading toward unleashing our creativity, our consciousness, and our experience of love in ourselves, with each other, with the planet, and with the cosmos. And the antidote to the movement toward taking over human beings with technological, technocratic transhumanism is freedom. It's individual sovereignty, it's private property. It's starting with our own body and the fruits of our labor and recognizing that that's our own to do with as we want. And then ultimately all of this based on a true free market, all based on the non-aggression principle. So without further ado, I want to bring these amazing folks on. Welcome to all of you. It's really great to see you. Thanks for taking the time on a Saturday in most time zones. So Matthew, let's start with you. How are you doing today?
Great. It's wonderful to be here, Foster. Thanks for the invitation. And hello to the Thrive On movement members. Greetings from Crestone, Colorado.
All right. Thank you. You can probably tell by the accent, the accent that Matthew is not originally from here. He's truly a global citizen, and we're glad to have him in our region right now. And then Kati, it's your first time on the Freedom Portal. We're thrilled to have you. Where are you and how are you today?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for bringing me today and bringing me here today. I am so excited to be part of the team, and I'm humbled by your introduction. Thank you so much. I am joining you from not so sunny California. I'm up in the Sierra foothills, and I am excited to be here with the Thrive On movement. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome back, Rajiv. Some of you know Rajiv already because we got to do a 2-hour conversation with him a few weeks ago, and he's now back from the India part of his book tour and about to start his US version. So Rajiv, have you recovered from jet lag yet?
Well, thank you so much. Glad to be here. I'm in Princeton, New Jersey. Just got back from India, where I was for 35 days and still recovering.
Okay, well, it's great to have you with us. And what we're going to do is I'll I'll interview you one at a time, and I'll have the other two go mic and camera off while I talk with one of you. Then I'll bring you all back for the roundtable. And I'm going to start with Matthew. And I'll do a little bit more of an introduction now of Matthew, because it's important that you kind of catch up with who this guy is on planet Earth right now. So Matthew James Bailey is an internationally recognized authority on global AI ethics. He's also deeply knowledgeable in the realm of consciousness development, and he's bringing these two together. Matthew is the author of Inventing World 3.0, one of my favorite new books. This thing is outstanding. We'll tell you the links later on for finding this, but Matthew has done an amazing job of gathering together what's going on and what needs to go on in order to go forward harmoniously with AI. He's also the inventor of new ethical AI methodologies and education programs. And we're going to talk about that specifically today. So Matthew, let me just start by saying, why do we need ethical AI?
So that's a great question. So let's approach that from two aspects. First of all, we have a timeline in action at the moment, which is transhumanism, which is a deletion of our sovereignty, which is an outsourcing of our consciousness to machines, and a deletion of our unified field. Life does not flourish. Ethical AI puts in a brand new polar opposite timeline where basically life flourishes. The ethics embodied within AI understands the individual, our cultures, our spiritual traditions, and supports us to truly thrive and to attain new potentials as humanity and discover more of our consciousness.
Okay, let me start by sharing my screen for a moment. And because in the Freedom Portal, we really like to define terms, and I love that you do also, and that you really do that thoroughly in your book. So I want to start in with the definition from your book, Inventing World 3.0, of artificial intelligence. It says, artificial intelligence is a human-created intelligence that is non-organic and is therefore classified as artificial. It exists and lives within the digital world of computers and computing systems. Okay, so then what's ethics? And in Matthew's book, he defines it as the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. And he says this extends also to include group of people. So then what is ethical AI?
So ethical AI in its true potential is understanding how consciousness has expressed itself in organic intelligence through things like ethics, like magnanimity of soul, greatness of soul, friendliness, ambition, and understand that each culture, each individual, each spiritual tradition expresses those ethics differently. So what we want to do is to embody those ethics of the individual and also cultural and spiritual groups into the AI life cycle, so it actually isn't colonizing our ethics from big tech and other organizations, but actually is honoring our freedom of choice within consciousness. So ethics in their fundamental, Foster, are actually frequencies from our consciousness. And we want AI to honor those frequencies so that we are operating in our full potential and our sole purpose, freedom and sovereignty. That's why
I think that's super intriguing that you're correlating ethics with a frequency. Because on the one hand, one could argue that, well, you can just change some frequency, but it doesn't necessarily change your intellectual understanding or your behavior. But it really resonates with me what you're saying, because in my investigation of the nature of the unified field and the nature of human consciousness, when we align with the dynamics of the unified field in our emotions, in our mind, and with one another, that to me, that's what I describe as the experience of love. You're saying, I think, is that alignment has a frequency in relation to the unified field that then expresses itself as ethical behavior. Accurate?
Yes, that's exactly right, Foster. This is the real truth and potential of artificial intelligence. If we study human intelligence and consciousness, then we can start to uncover formula for how we actually embody ethics within AI and benevolently shepherd it towards this new potential timeline where what I call the cultural singularity or the soul singularity, where we are thriving as a human species in our gifts, in our purpose, and in our experience of consciousness.
Well, you know, also in your book, you went all the way back to Aristotle. And
Right.
I found that very intriguing because, as all of our network knows, I'm a fan of the non-aggression principle as the true north of a universal morality, not only for humanity, but for all of the cosmos. So I was reading through your summary of Aristotle's ethical, moral and ethical virtues. And so I was checking them off against the non-aggression principle. And they are great virtues. They include courage, moderation, magnificence, greatness of soul, which is magnanimity, ambition, gentleness, friendliness, truthfulness, wittiness. Now, there were 11 of them. That's 9 of them. There was 2 others, liberality and justice. And actually, those are as wonderful as those other virtues are, I think that they come after drawing the boundary, protecting us from unethical behavior. And liberality, your definition in there of liberality is the respect for political, religious, or moral views, even if you do not agree with them. So that doesn't mean someone can hit you over the head, but it means they can have a different point of view. That's really, really key these days when literally the entire humanity is being polarized by one facet of identity politics after another. And we're being, in my opinion, essentially set against each other. So
Right.
what role in AI ethics do you see that the non-aggression principle of actually guarding against anyone initiating force against someone else, except in self-defense, what role do you see that playing?
Right, that's a great question. So first of all, AI is a mirror back to us. We've been given a choice whether we want to, how benevolently we shepherd this artificial intelligence, how benevolently will we create it, how benevolently will we use it to bring us into new potentials and new systems about equality and freedom. So actually, as we look at inventing this intelligence, Foster, we're actually being invited to choose which are our virtue ethics, which are our values that we honor, and which ones do we want to take forward as a new foundation for humanity, and which ones do we want to let go of. And so this is a real mirror back to us to say, hey, listen, this is who I am. And these are the virtue ethics. These are the principles I want to take forward. Now, when it comes forward, when it comes to the non-aggression pact, I think we have to be a warrior and a priest or a priestess at the same time. We offer the hands of love to others to come and play together and collaborate together. But at the same time, we're a warrior ready to defend our truth. And so that, I think, is something that the non-aggression pact beautifully understands, is we must defend truth, but also we're open to collaborating with others.
Well, the other virtue that Aristotle noted was justice. And you described that as the fair treatment of people. Laws are based on the principles of justice. Equal and democratic rights are strongly associated with justice and fair play. So I want to dissect that for a minute, because what I notice is the political right tends to have liberty as their core moral compass, and the political left tends to have fairness. And I'm all in favor of fairness. I'm all in favor of freedom. And I think that the left has been an easy target for the kind of communist technocrats, because fairness is kind of up for grabs in terms of what you think is fair. If one person has a house, a big house, the other one has another one has a small house, the third one has a tent. Well, you can say, well, it's only fair if I come and take property away from the one person to give it to the other. And so you're off into the races without noticing that the fundamental aspect, in my opinion, of fairness is not violating that person or their property. And the same thing goes for democratic rights. If we define democratic as rule by the majority, then, a lynch mob had a majority, but they certainly weren't ethical or fair. So I think that that's part of the challenge that that you and your team are sussing out right now, is actually coming to creating a clarity about what is ethical in regards to AI and what's not. So I want to explore that with the rest of the time that I have just with you independently, then we can do it with the group later on, is because I'm absolutely enamored of what you're doing with your project of creating trainings, education, and ultimately certification, both for individuals and for institutions, to actually certify that they are aligned with moral principles in their treatment of AI. And I'll get to the question in just a second. But I've been noticing recently that both the White House and the World Economic Forum have come out with their ethical AI Bill of Rights. It's really kind of the White House came up with it, and now the WEF is strongly promoting it, which makes me think there was a collaboration there in the first place. So if we've already got the ethical AI Bill of Rights, why are you bothering to do all this exploration into what are the ethical principles of AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me address that in two ways. To understand truth, we have to go back to the source, which is consciousness. When we go back to the source, we start to understand the truth of what ethics are and their purpose to support us in advancing as a human species into benevolent experiences, right? So we have to go back to the source. What they're doing is a cerebral exercise. Ethics have to be felt and learned. They have to be experienced. These guys are all cerebral ivory towers that are not talking to the people. The people have not voted on this. So what we have is basically a kind of a technology brain approach to ethics without the real feeling of understanding, without the real feeling of knowing the beauty of what ethics are. And so that's an important thing for us to recognize, Foster. We have to go back to the source to know the truth.
Well, you and I have talked previously. We discovered that we have both had a similar idea that we have different names for. Ray Kurzweil and other leaders in the transhumanist movement are very eager for the so-called singularity. And I understand that as the point at which artificial intelligence, digital calculation so far transcends human beings that they basically, we turn over the reins of the development of humanity and evolution on planet Earth. We turn it over to the robots. Now, you've got a term, social or cultural singularity. I've been calling it, prior to meeting you, I've been calling it the human fulfillment singularity, because I think fundamentally our job is not to get out of the way and turn it over to digital robots, but to actually fulfill our own potential, and then in the process, learn how to use AI ethically and harmoniously. Can you address that?
Yes, so that's beautifully put. The whole purpose of this new cultural or soul singularity, first of all, Foster, the world needs another polarity that is a direct opposite where consciousness thrives. And so the whole endpoint of this is for humanity and the individual to reach new potential. So I absolutely agree with your definition. And so the cultural soul singularity, or this new human realization you're talking about, new potential of humanity, is where life flourishes, where we honor our inner authority and our sovereignty within consciousness as an individual and as a group. And that's how we invent from that authority and that inner sovereignty. And we don't outsource to machines. Consciousness has not finished with us yet, Foster. There's more of the unified field for us to discover. And so let's adventure into that rather than having us deleted and outsourcing our sovereignty, where the belief is machines are actually the intelligence on the leading intelligence on Earth. That simply isn't the case. Consciousness is the intelligence on Earth, and we want that to thrive.
That's beautifully said. The reason I wanted to start with you is that I think that your endeavors really do a great job of clarifying the context for AI and our relationship to it. And I know you've been boiling it down now to training programs that you're doing. Other, big organizations are already wanting to be a part of this, even though it's very in its early stages. Can you talk a little bit about what the purpose of the training is and who's getting interested in this already?
Yeah, great. Thank you for the question. So there's two sides to this. One is the methodologies and inventions that myself and Cotty have created, where we can actually embody ethics within the AI life cycle, where we can take any worldview and basically measure the degree of compliance in transparency and trust of ethical AI to that worldview. This gives communities, groups, societies and cultures and spiritual traditions new freedoms for them to decide what the ethical quality is. So we ran a workshop with NASA, not an endorsement, but we ran a workshop with NASA where they went through these methodologies, and they're writing a report on this that will be public. And NASA were a great organization to test with, because if we went to a government, no one trusts the government. We went to big tech, well, there's an issue there. So we went to an independent organization that really have invented technologies on Earth, like digital twin, which is huge, and also technology in space, so they're seeking new truths. So NASA is kind of a point where there's no real polarity between assessment, but actually there's more respect for them. So NASA was for the workshop. So we take organizations to the workshop where we reveal these methodologies and inventions. We don't put it in the public domain, Foster, because of disruption and plagiarism from some of the organizations you've mentioned. The second thing is the training courses to certify and equip leaders in this new ethical AI phenomenon, for them to discover their new realization, their truth of how they can use our inventions and methodologies in order to shepherd ethical AI to do well and honor their spiritual traditions, their cultures, their beliefs. So we have one guy that's looking at universal AI that honors Hinduistic traditions. I've been in conversation with Buddhist leaders about how do they want to put their Buddhist principles into ethical AI. So that's what we do. We actually work with organizations where they can see the inventions and see how it works, and also with leaders. So we need new leaders in our world that are certified and liberated and awakened and informed and powerful.
I love that you're starting with NASA, given that I'm so enthusiastic about humanity finally finding a universal morality. And that doesn't mean just global. It actually means a universal morality. And the non-aggression principle is the only thing I've seen which is a serious candidate for that. So the notion that those who are, well, at least some of the parties who are building the ships that are going out into the cosmos, I love that it's starting there. Okay, are you meeting any resistance so far from more traditional institutions in regards to your particular worldview on what ethical AI means?
Yes, we are. So we've had disruption from some research institutes that are very famous. We've had disruption from some of the organizations you've mentioned on here. We've even had a computing giant. When we announced more of what we're doing publicly, 5 days later, they wrote an article in Fortune magazine, opening line, "I do not like ethical AI." We've had plagiarisms. So what we've done is we've basically bought everything, we've tested everything, we've bought it back behind closed doors, and we're now opening up to those that align with the ethics and virtues and values of our organization. So we have met resistance.
Well, I want to close this particular part of our chat by just acknowledging you, not just for what you're doing in the world, but when you approached me about being an advisor to AI ethics, I was very enthusiastic about it. Since we launched Thrive 2, since we started making Thrive 2, I got off of every board, every organization that I was a part of. I separated from, just so that I could have the time and the freedom to do what I needed to do for for Thrive 2, and I've only rejoined 2 organizations. And one of them is Mad Energy in Idaho, because I think it's so pivotal, so critical what they're doing with new energy technology. And the other is AI ethics, because to me, as I mentioned at the opening, there's just nothing more important. Most people don't even know that the end game of this global cult is transhumanism. But for those who do understand, if we can actually mitigate that and allow ourselves to go forward hand in hand with AI, I'm a huge fan of the benefits of AI, and we need to be super careful. So I warned you at the beginning that I was really flattered by your invitation, but also I cautioned you that there may be a cost to pay with certain traditional entities when they see my name or a Thrive movement or something like that. And you took me very seriously, and you thought about it for a while, and then actually made a decision relative to an invitation where you were invited to go with a group of very prestigious folks in this field. And when they saw my name on your list, they said, no, we don't want anything to do with him. And so I know that it started already. And the fact that you were willing to go with your inner sense of ethics and a future alignment that we wouldn't have to compromise we wouldn't have to compromise our souls. I just deeply admire you for doing that, because that's that moment of truth that every single human being on the planet is facing in so many domains these days. So thank you for that, and we'll bring you back on for the roundtable.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you, Foster.
You're welcome. And so before we bring on Kati, who I want to address these issues next, I want to show you a quick clip, because for some of you, the notion of AI may become somewhat foreign or new, AI ethics even more vague. So I want to show you just a couple of minute clip from Yuval Noah Harari, who is the chief scientific advisor to the World Economic Forum. They think this guy, walks on water. And so to give you a glimpse of his vision of the future, let me play a brief clip for you. Okay.
Many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough. And nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon, at least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people. We humans should get used to the idea that we are no longer mysterious souls. We are now hackable animals. Data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. And if indeed we succeed in hacking and engineering life, this will be not just the greatest revolution in the history of humanity. This will be the greatest revolution in biology since the very beginning of life 4 billion years ago.
Okay, so if that doesn't run a bit of a chill up your spine, keep your seatbelt fastened. And Kati, why don't you come on and join me here now? And
okay, hold on a second. I have to calm down after that video.
Well, that's probably a good idea for all of us to take a deep breath on that one. So let me tell you a little bit more about Kati before we jump in here. So Kati is the CTO of Ambient Science at the Global Digital Science Consortium. and she's also the CTO of AIethics.world. Note that website, and I'm sure it's in the chat and will be frequently. That's where you can get access to these folks. She's also a tech genius, in my opinion, at the cutting edge of the human digital interface. She's created numerous patents in the fields of ambient science, orchestration, service management, edge computing, and data science solutions. And from what I know about Kati, she's not only courageous, but she's bringing really cutting edge knowledge of how technology and data works. She's bringing ethical consciousness from her own life into that arena at the technological development level like no one I've ever even heard of. So I really want to spend our time with you today, especially exploring that, Kati. So I guess the first question that I would ask you is about data sovereignty. So it's becoming more and more a buzzword for people. People didn't even used to think about data. They didn't even know their data was being stolen and sold. And then sovereignty seems to be getting to be a more and more important word. So what is data sovereignty, and why does it matter?
Sure. Thank you for your question. Before I begin, I do have to put a disclaimer in that I do work for a large corporation, and I don't represent that corporation today. So I'm here on my own time and my own volition. But to begin with, data sovereignty, I think there are actually two things we need to look at: data sovereignty and data agency. When we began with, and I'm going to maybe go back a little bit in history and start with very early evolutions or early stages of computing. When we first started taking things out of our lives, our businesses, and started creating the computational view of the processes and the data sets that we were using on our day-to-day lives or our day-to-day businesses. The whole purpose was to improve the rate at which we could accomplish certain tasks so that we can automate certain things, improve the rate at which we were responding, to provide better customer service, to streamline the communication or streamline the relationships and the work that we were doing with each other. As we developed over time, over the last 40, 50, 60 years in computing, that underlying premise hasn't changed. So in today's technology and society, there is no such thing as data sovereignty and data agency for two reasons. Number one, individuals are not part of that particular level of digital essence or digital life. We are only able to a very, very rudimentary level to interface using our keyboards, using our phones, using our words. If we're talking to voice activated systems, we are only able to rudimentarily interface with that digital realm, and we are actually not part of that realm. So one of the main reasons why we don't understand and are not part of the digital sovereignty and digital agency and the sovereignty of data and the agency of data is because we are not actually aware of it. So we don't have the consciousness that data, data composers, data acquirers, data storers, data, entities that transmit data and store data and use data and analyze data and infer data, they sit in this digital realm and we are not aware of it. So in order for us to be able to do that, we actually need to have awareness. And that awareness requires us to have a presence, and that presence has to be acknowledged, and we have to be able to be part of and an equivalent part of that digital realm so that we can actually communicate as equal members in that digital realm so that we can actually manage what's actually occurring in that digital space. So what that's actually driving is this concept of something very simple called choice. So we don't actually have a choice. And we don't have a choice, and we don't have awareness, and we don't have a presence. So everything on the digital realm just occurs without our knowledge. So the concept of data sovereignty and data agency today is actually not possible. So one of the things that I think I shared a talk that I did at one of the IEEE Futures events where we were talking about how do we actually create this data agency and data sovereignty by actually creating a view of us or a version of us in the digital space that could represent us at the speed of light, and could represent us with the rights, privileges, rules, and regulations of who we are in the physical space, and create that equivalence in the digital space. That is the first step towards agency and sovereignty of data, is that presence.
I want to pause. Yeah. I want to pause
Sure.
you there for just a moment to make sure this is sinking in for people, because it's one of those things that's so big and so simple that it's easy to gloss over it. And my understanding of what you're saying is that not only are we as a species ignorant that this digital space really exists separate from us, but even if we're aware that it does, we don't have any agency or sovereignty in that space. I'm reminded of that comedy segment by George Carlin, where he's talking about the kind of the people who run the world really, and he says it's a big club and you ain't in it. Now I said, this is the digital version. There's this entire other world that now, meta and AI and digital, data capture and all that kind of stuff that most of us didn't even know existed, much less now finding out that that world is where they're trying to corral us into that world and then have that world take us over. So is that too simplistic, or is that an accurate assessment?
So actually, I think you have you fully described it. In fact, you've even went 2 steps further, which is why the World Economic Forum scares me in a way, because they are not providing access to the digital realm, and in fact, and this is my interpretation based on what I know. They are actually trying to figure out ways by which they can create further control by obfuscating the digital space and reaching down into the physical space and creating the social scoring, managing our freedoms and curtailing our freedoms by control of our currency, fully digitizing the currency, and by creating a non-sovereign but central controlled bank and a central controlled digital ID, where the digital ID would actually be part of the human being. So the control and the fingers are coming from digital down instead of human up. So part of the work that has to occur, and the work that we need to look at, and in a way, this is threatening the incumbents. Is
so
that we need to, yeah.
Let me ask you related to that. I know I don't know much about it, but I know that you are working on a cutting edge project to actually guard our data even as it's getting created, because most people don't realize that your data is stolen the moment that you create it, given the platforms that we use. I don't know how much you can say, but please say as much as you can to just let people know what you're working on it, because it gives me tremendous hope to know that you are.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you for that pointer and that a question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share what's available and what can be found based on existing material that we've already published on the web. especially the conversations that I had with, and I put into the links from IEEE as well as Seeking Delphi. The main concept that we are working on is actually changing and modifying the data access paradigm. So one of the things that people have a kind of a misconception on is, I'm going to go back to something simple as my phone, is that when they create something on this phone, when they take a picture, they believe that the phone is theirs, therefore the pictures that they're taking is theirs. And that very, very basic notion is unfortunately not true. There is a contract that you sign with Apple, although Apple is working very hard to provide some amount of control back to you. But you actually sign a contract of adhesion with the devices that you're working with Facebook, Meta, that you are engaging on social media, with LinkedIn, Microsoft, when you're working on LinkedIn. And in virtually every engagement, you have this contract of adhesion. And I'm not a legal expert either, but my understanding of contract of adhesion is that that third party that is about to create, construct, store, transmit your data is essentially creating an agreement with you. You're not a party to that agreement outside of agreeing to it, to say that whatever that's going to happen with that data is up to them. And there is really no way that anyone in their right mind would read the 8,000 to 9,000 pages of that digital contract. So we all agree that we will do that, and really not understanding what is actually going to happen behind that. So the work that we are doing is actually fundamentally very, very simple. But technologically, and based on where we are and how we developed and what the history of computing is, it's revolutionary, because we have to get in front of the paradigm of data composition and data creation by creating that entity that I talked about earlier, and then the transaction and contract that has to be there in order to control what is about to happen. We cannot engage with that data after it already been acquired. So we are trying to get in front of that with agency and sovereignty, with rules and contracts. And the conversation that you had earlier with Matthew around these, these AI rules and laws and AI constitution, and we can go into what that really means technically, but we have to get in front of that so that you actually change the paradigm of that contract. So you eliminate this contract of adhesion and you create the sovereign entities, and you elevate yourself into that sovereign digital entity that has the ability to negotiate, to drive your choices into a live contract. And the technology is out there with smart contracts and different digital supply chain and transaction management technologies to create that ability to negotiate, so that the contract that you create is prior to the data that is being created, so that you can apply the contract provisions on the data, so that from that point on, your data is sovereign and you actually have the ability to manage it. So conceptually, this is actually a very simple idea, but the technology and the enablement is where the rubber meets the road. And that's where we are looking for help.
It's somewhat like the new energy technologies. Once someone has discovered how to access the energy of the field, it's not all that difficult. Then the problem becomes more one of politics and security. Right. Will the powers that want to control other people allow freedom to actually be on every level of human endeavor? And their indications are not so far. Now, one of the other things that you've helped educate me on is that when we're accessing all these big platforms for reasonably low costs, and it's so convenient, what's the trick behind that? How can they do that? Especially these companies that literally that go on 15 years without actually making any net profit. How in the world do they do that? And you educated me as to that their business model is fundamentally selling your data. And most people don't even know that literally it's billions and billions for each of these companies in selling your data. Now, I'm not a big fan of universal basic income because it's government based and it's based on stealing from some people to give to others. So I don't think that's an answer. It's a very dangerous track. But on the other hand, you and I have talked about, imagine if you could sell your data. You had sovereignty and you could choose what data you wanted to sell and not. So if transhumanist technology companies need massive data, they can pay you for the data instead of gathering it for free and selling it for billions. And think how many people could make significant revenue just simply choosing whether or not to sell their data. So can you talk a little bit about the challenge of these companies if we go with ethics needing to change their business model?
Actually, I think there are maybe two or even maybe more questions underneath what you're asking, and there are different tangents that we can go down on, but I will address two major ones.
Yeah.
So if I look at the existing contract of adhesions, I'm gonna pick on Meta because they're easy to pick on. In the Facebook contract, that EULA, that user agreement that we sign, we essentially sign away the rights to that data. So people, it was very funny, every once in a while there are these little posts that come out that say, I do not give permission for Facebook to use my data, take my data. Well, those posts are not worth the bits and bytes and the microns of the microvolts of power that it takes to actually create that content, because it doesn't do anything. The pure purpose of Facebook and Meta is to collect data and sell that data either directly or indirectly, or infer direction or infer insight out of that data. If you're looking at the data paradigm all the way from unstructured data to insight and even wisdom, the whole purpose is to create value behind that data that can be sold. And their only cogs, their only expense in that is the computational power it takes to achieve that purpose. Because we are not part of that equation. We are just a free, a raw source of oil into that paradigm. So we are the dead dinosaurs that are becoming oil eventually, and providing that raw source material to Facebook Meta to do with it as they wish. But we signed away that right. So we really don't have the ability or the recompense to actually change that. So the paradigm is, and initially, I think we need to have the choice whether or not we want to do that or not. And that choice is currently not available.
And by the way, let me just interject for a moment that for those of you who are listening on Facebook, I still have a Facebook account. We have hundreds of thousands of followers on Facebook. I think Facebook is a fantastic tool. And for those of you who might be listening from the censorship department or something like that, we're not trying to get rid of Facebook. We're simply saying facts in order to try to liberate Facebook so that it can become, again, a thriving tool for humanity. Otherwise, it's going to go the way of Twitter. Twitter is in the process now of getting liberated. And a lot of people are losing their jobs if their goal was to censor and control people's behavior. So we're on your side, but we have to get honest about this stuff.
Absolutely. And personally, I have a Facebook account too, and I use that to keep in touch with friends and family and to reach a large audience in some of the thinking and find fellow travelers who are thinking the same. I actually like Facebook, and I think Meta and Meta's strategy is actually brilliant in creating more and different ways of accessing content and data and getting there. But I think that there is an opportunity to modify and actually pioneer the relationship between the digital entity of Facebook Meta and the digital entity of humans in order for us to have a different type of relationship, and a relationship in which both entities actually can, have a choice and negotiate that relationship more effectively. So there is an opportunity to create control on both sides, and it will not change, and it may actually give active permission to content that Facebook Meta can monetize in the way they want.
Yes.
It also gives an opportunity for individual sovereignty to choose when they don't like where it went, or where they have an opportunity to make a different decision on certain data points. It may actually also drive some economies of scale for different use cases where it makes more sense to share in the revenue and income versus, being a pure, free model.
Yeah, I think I want to wrap up this particular segment on that note, because that's a very positive win-win perspective, which I think is going to be necessary. What we're doing in the Freedom Portal now, we did 2 years of explorations of every single sector with lots of experts and deep dives into each of the major topics and so forth. And now what we've pivoted, and now we're really focused on solutions. So we still got to talk about the realities of the history and the situation that we're in. But one of the reasons I wanted to have all three of you on is that you're involved in such brilliant and viable solutions. And I love that perspective on the digital sovereignty and how we can handle data in a win-win way in the future. So, okay, so if you go camera off for a few minutes, we'll bring Rajiv on, and then we'll, afterward, we'll do a roundtable with all of us. So Rajiv, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Foster, for having me.
It's great to see you. And before we dive into all the thoughts and concepts and so forth, could you just give us a little report? Because a lot of our fans were excited about when they heard your last interview with us, and then that you were taking off to go on this tour of India. So could you just briefly say why you went on a tour of India and how it went?
So I came out with a new book called Snakes in the Ganga. This talks about dangers that are not visible, because the Ganga is a sacred space and nobody expects poison and threats. Referring back to your call for non-violence and non-harming, what it says is that there is a lot of harming and violence going on, which is beneath the surface. Now, in particular, what I wanted to do is to make people in India aware that certain global movements are going on which are affecting them already, which they might not know about. And it turns out 99% of them don't know about it. And these are kinds of collectivism, what you would call collectivism, identity politics and collectivism, to deny people individual freedom, which is a pathway to slavery. And these, you mentioned the problems that this poses, but there's another level of problem on top of it, which is when the controllers, when the people who control, the nexuses that control, are living in another continent, and the people being controlled are not even aware of it, not even participant, then the level of control is even worse. So I'm talking about sort of a return of colonialism, where technology, the data haves and have-nots, what Kati talked about, when you look at it, the entities that control all this AI and the new data tend to be, American companies, the Chinese government, maybe some other Western governments. So the rest of the world, which is where 80% of the people live, not only are they subject to these controls and loss of sovereignty and agency that we heard about recent in this show, but they are not even aware of it. I mean, they are physically removed. They don't understand. They don't read this stuff. So I want to be a voice for that. And I thought that since the largest such group of people is in India, 1.4 billion, and my job is to kind of wake them up, which has been very successful during this trip. So I'm going to go back for another month in February. But now we are doing this tour in North America, starting with Canada next week, and then the Bay Area, Southern California, Boston, all these places. And then we'll go to Europe and then back to India for another round, because the demand was so much, we couldn't fulfill the demand in one tour.
Well, I'm really excited that you're doing that and that you're doing a US tour. And Kimberly and I are very eager to see you. We're planning in November. I think we get a visit from you.
Yes.
And your co-author, Vijaya Viswanathan.
Yes.
And so we're really looking forward to actually meeting you in person for the first time. Kimberly and I have been devouring your books, and that's a big meal. But she just is finishing the artificial intelligence and the future of power that we talked a lot about in our last interview. And this Snakes in the Ganga that you just mentioned, I have just finished reading that, and wow, I have not read a more powerful scholarly book, I think, in my lifetime. And what I mean by that is that tremendous research has gone into this. The history is there, the facts are there, the names are there, there's diagrams, there's examples, everything you could want laid out in a way that's super user friendly. This is not like some PhD exam or something like that. You know, you preview the chapters and then you lay it out with examples, and then you do summaries at the end and a conclusion summarize. You really take us by the hand and walk us through some of the most important awareness and then activism on planet Earth right now. So I really want to dive into that. And one of the most profound things for me in reading the book was that I spend my entire life connecting dots, and I love it when someone helps me connect further dots. And as I've been watching the wokeism take over in the US and take over the media and take over Hollywood and take over our universities, now and then the high schools, and now it's getting down into the elementary schools, I thought it was just kind of some passing ignorance that was being used, yes, to gain power, but I didn't realize that the history going back to bringing cultural Marxism and postmodernism together into a tool of the global elite to use for this technocratic takeover. So can you just give us a little summary of that so that people can get a hint of the scope of what you're talking about, and then they can go further in your videos and your book?
Yeah, see, the Marxism divided the world into oppressors and oppressed, yes. And all history consists of oppression. And so the goal is that the oppressed must get united, must get woken up, and they must overthrow the oppressors. All this sounds very nice. All of us would like to do that. But Marx was looking at the oppressed as an economic class, and not a religious category, not a race category, and not a category of sexual orientation. So now what has happened is all the people that can be made to feel that they are victims of something or somebody are being mobilized to get up against society, old structures, historical structures, religious structures, structures of nations. Family as a structure is being attacked, because the view being made is that civilization as we know it has been the construction of oppressors for their own benefit, and civilization as we know it must be dismantled. Well, you know, the people who are behind it have no experience reconstructing something better. They have no experience building anything. It's a destructive kind of a mentality. So it will lead to further problems. And the only winners, if you ask why would would Zuckerberg and World Economic Forum support this? Well, what you have to find out, what you have to realize is that the vacuum of power, the vacuum of structure, the social disorder and chaos created is an opportunity for a digital dictatorship, a digital caste system, if you will, a hierarchy based on artificial intelligence, new technologies, implants, transhumanism. So, we have are two twin movements. My two books are talking about two parts of this movement. The AI book, which you showed earlier, mentioned the sort of things that concern Matthew and Kati, and the second book that you're reading, Snakes in the Ganga, talks about the dismantling. So there is a program in place to dismantle structures, throw people into emotional chaos, psychological chaos. They don't have their reference points. They don't have their families. They don't have their communities to support them because all those are abusive and they have to be disbanded. And in parallel, there is the new movement of technocrats is to replace all this with a new kind of society in which they are at the top. Now, everybody knows the problem with the social credit system that China has, where they are scoring people in the provinces to see who is good and who's not good according to Chinese policy, and then they're rewarded like a frequent flyer program kind of a thing on a national scale. So everybody has this kind of a thing going on. Well, in fact, Facebook and Twitter and all these guys, social media, are doing the same. I mean, they are scoring us with our data in accordance with their understanding of what is socially acceptable, what are the community standards, what is their criteria of hate speech, what is their criteria of fake news, who gets to decide. So they put algorithms in place to do the job of hundreds of millions of human beings by scoring all of us all the time. And this kind of a AI-based scoring system is managing individuals towards a kind of a hierarchy of power. And the corporate equivalent of that is the ESG movement, which World Economic Forum started. This ESG movement, which sounds very nice, environment, we all want to have a good environment, social justice for the S, we all want social justice, and G for the governance, and so on. While the principles and the ultimate goals are very admirable, the way they're going about it is it's sort of like a scoring system, just like the scoring system for individuals. This is the scoring system for institutions, and now institutions have to behave a certain way to be in the good books of the World Economic Forum and the international consultants, the McKinseys and the Price Waterhouse and the Ernst & Youngs, who get to decide what constitutes good corporate behavior. And so that is a social credit system for corporations. So you have individual level social credit systems, you have corporate level social credit systems, all of them making decisions on you, me, our organizations, everybody. And meanwhile, you have people destroying the old structures to make us vulnerable. So we are in serious trouble as a human society, and we need to wake up and start like the four of us are doing, start raising our voices and a counter movement.
Can you also help people understand the role of American educational institutions, particularly Harvard in this case? In the US, people put the Ivy League colleges up on this big pedestal, and they get smart people there because they're very restrictive in their acceptance policy. But it's really, many of these universities have become not only the academic establishment for the East Coast Washington consensus, but they've become the major nests of wokeism, and especially Harvard. I knew something about Harvard's role in this, but your book just rocked my world on that. Could you describe briefly the role of Harvard and particularly Indian billionaires, in this movement to take over the world through wokeism?
So, yeah, so Harvard is what we featured in this book as the nest of snakes. The snakes seem like, to people in India, the snakes seem like a random person here and there, and they haven't connected the dots, and they don't know why there are people doing all these things. But Harvard is a systematic, institution on an industrial scale, developing these ideologies, turning wokeism into different cultural forms. So wokeism started as an American phenomenon, talking about blacks and whites and racism and so on. But then there is an Indianized version, there's a Japanese version, there's a Singapore version, there's a French version. President Macron pushed back quite hard on this by saying that the French idea of liberation has to do with individual and not an identity that has rights. The French idea of rights is individual rights. So he said a Muslim has the same individual rights as a non-Muslim, but the Muslims collectively in France don't have any special rights. Nor do Christians, nor do whites, nor do blacks. People do not have collective rights; they have individual rights, and that's the essence of the French Revolution. The whole idea of French, freedom and principles. So that was a very good pushback. Now, people in other countries haven't come up with similar pushbacks, and I'm trying to get people mobilized. So the American wokeism and based social justice has become the largest American export. It used to be meritocracy, but now they're attacking meritocracy. They're saying that meritocracy is a conspiracy of the same oppressors. Meritocracy is basically a form of oppression, which is sort of camouflaged under this idea of merit, but there is not real merit. I mean, the people who win on merit, there is something, the structures have been set in place to help them. So this means that they also want to topple meritocracy. So you'll end up with a mediocre society, because a society where America was built based on meritocracy, based on free enterprise, based on creativity. And if you're going to dismantle all that, then the future, belongs to places like China, because they're not dismantling, they're not going into wokeism, they are rewarding meritocracy. So basic foundational values of the United States are being questioned and challenged, and these ideas exported everywhere. The Indian billionaires come in because, they made their billions. Now the second or third richest man in the world is an Indian called Gautam Adani. And in the top 10, there are top 10 in the world, there are 2 or 3 Indians. So, and this number is going up. So having made their money in India, become very famous and become almost like gods, now they want to have a seat at the table in the Western world, on the global stage. They want to be hobnobbing with the Bill Gates and with the, all these elitist people. And a quick way to do that is to dump some tens of millions of dollars at Harvard and have a big building and have a school named after them and have their kids going in there and be felicitated by the president of Harvard as some big, very noble philanthropist, and sort of like the new Rockefellers and Carnegies and so on. So this is a syndrome which is very dangerous, because they're taking not only money from poor countries, because these billionaires have made their money in poor countries, they're taking their name and their credibility, and using that, they're spreading things that are against the interests of that country. And so this book is actually a very, it's a tough book. And we are up against very powerful people. We are not only up against powerful people in the United States like Harvard, and a whole lot of wokeism type people in the fringe left of the Democratic Party, but we're also up against the billionaires in India and much of the media in India, because there is and the people in India love to go to the World Economic Forum. They get their name in, they think that they've made it. They go and tell their whole community. They start showing off how much of a big shot they've become, because they can have a picture in Davos with somebody. So this clamoring for Western legitimization is a new form of colonization. And it's a colonization being done by Indians themselves. I mean, it's a colonization where these dangerous ideas, it's not British people in India like in the old days, or Americans sitting there in the, physically managing this new colonization. They've educated and bred a tier of Indians to go and do it for them. So actually, it's far more dangerous and invisible in a sense.
Yeah. Well, I want to close on this point because it's such an important one. You've coined the term the moronization of humanity, turning people into morons, and I see it happening all around. It's very chilling because to go back to your reference to Marx, there's this whole Hegelian dialectic that now a lot of people know as problem, reaction, solution. It's thesis, antithesis, and then there's supposed to be a synthesis. So Marx said, okay, you've got this oppression in the world. So the antithesis is we need a violent revolution to take over control from the current oppressors. But there's never, this has been tried in over 24 countries, and it leads to the same disaster and murders and starvation every single time, authoritarianism and so forth. So I believe that what you're doing with your work and in your books is that you're actually showing the synthesis, that we can transcend the identity politics. We can transcend the left and right, but we need to move to a level of consciousness like Matthew was talking about before, that is at a higher frequency, that is a higher level of understanding and true tolerance of it, and acceptance of different points of view, just not acceptance of the initiation of force. So we'll talk more about that as we gather in the roundtable. I'm going to need to close this segment right now, and we're going to do a transition where we close down the public platforms. And for all of you, you can, if you like this conversation, you want to join us for more, we're going to have an extensive Q&A. We're going to have a roundtable where we're going to go into topics like the consciousness underlying the solutions and what I want to get the opinions from these experts about what's happening with Elon Musk and Twitter, with major states taking millions and billions of dollars out of BlackRock. I want to get their opinions on this Google guy who claimed that his computer was now conscious. That's the type of thing we're going to go into, and then we're going to open it up to a major Q&A. So currently, I want to turn it over to Leandro. Leandro, welcome on.
How's it going, guys?
It's great to see you, and I know you're back in your hometown after all your travels. Welcome back.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's good to be back. And it's good to connect with all of you that aren't usually with us. And of course, our Freedom Portal subscribers here that are always with us every Saturday is one of my favorite things on the planet. So yeah, thank you guys for being here. I just want to go ahead and show you guys a teaser trailer of what it's like to be a Freedom Portal subscriber and some of the things that we talk about. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and run that. And then I will get into the instructions for how to make the transition and join our community.
The key is freedom. We are in a lethal mess right now in the world.
They're lying, and we know they're lying, and they know that we know that they're lying, yet still they lie.
Did you see what Fauci said? Did you see what the WHO did? Things that start bubbling up that I just feel like I need to communicate with somebody because there's all this crazy stuff happening.
Media is the greatest enemy and is the greatest tool being used against us.
A lot of people are probably familiar now with the World Economic Forum saying, well, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. But these people plan to own everything.
But we forget that underneath that are a bunch of scared children who have nuclear weapons and biological weapons, and now artificial intelligence.
Technocracy and understanding that is really a doorway into the whole next level of red pill.
And that's one of the reasons why we're pushing so hard to expose this stuff and also to surface what are the ethical guidelines by which we can actually proceed harmoniously with the benefits of AI without falling prey to this authoritarian agenda.
This effort towards globalism and global governance is an effort to create extreme centralization. So a response to that is to decentralize.
The main promise that got me involved in the cryptocurrencies was the liberation and sovereignty of our species.
I think it's the most important topic on the planet right now. How can we create a universal morality that can actually guide us through all these different questions?
We are being connected by something much greater than ourselves.
People are gathering around truth and freedom because it's critical that we do.
Imagine the amount of human energy, creativity, liberation, release from fear.
We've got love, we've got the truth, and we've got the life force on our side. And ultimately that is going to be unstoppable, even if it's ugly in the transition.
We're changing the world. That's what's up, and the stakes have never been higher.
The good news is that this is still a story in the making.
All right. So now to walk you guys through how to actually make the transition and come join us in the Freedom Portal. So you're just going to go to thriveon.com. And once you click to start your free trial, you're going to be presented with the options that you have for subscribing. You can go ahead and take a look at the perks that are available there and make your selection. And as with most subscriptions, we quit if at any point you decide that you don't want to be a part of our community, but we're certain you will.
Leandro, for me, you're breaking up. Could other people hear him coherently? Or was it freezing?
Yeah, it looks like my Zoom crashed. I think I'm back now.
Okay. Yeah, can you start the directions again from when you go to Thrive On and then to the Freedom Portal?
I can. Okay, so you're going to go to thriveon.com and click Start My Trial. And it's going to take you to the page where you actually have your options for subscribing. You can choose to be an explorer or an angel. You can choose to pay monthly or annually. So you're going to go ahead and make your selection there and click Start My Trial. And as with most subscriptions, we're going to need your credit card, but you can cancel at any time if you decide that you don't want to be a part of our community. But I'm certain you will, because we got a lot of great content, a fantastic catalog, and a great community here. So after you go through that process, is going to take you to the thank you page, and you're just going to click return to the Freedom Portal catalog. And once you do, it's going to take you back to the catalog page, and you're going to click sign in to continue, not get access now because you've just subscribed. But just go ahead and click sign in to continue. Enter the credentials that you set in the subscription process. And then it'll take you back to the event page where you can click attend on today's event. And then it'll take you to the next page where you can actually click join webinar. And then that's going to bring you back into the Zoom with us, where you'll be able to continue the show and be a part of our conversation here that we're having in Zoom. So we're looking forward to connecting with any of you guys that decided to join us. And I'll turn it back over to Foster to continue the show.
Okay, thanks, Leandro. So it usually takes between